All right, everybody. We are going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Zach Kunkel. For those of y'all who are just now hopping on, I am a product marketing manager over here at Dude Solutions, overseeing some of our energy products and services. And so wanted to welcome us to our presentation, Every Dollar Counts, the importance of energy audits in the new norm. So we all know that right now the world looks totally different than it did six to 8 months ago. And what we're here today to really is to talk about how does energy come into this new norm? What is the importance of actually staying focused on managing utilities, and what opportunities are there really to go ahead and start tackling? So we've got a great presentation to start talking about that and really to hear from some of your peers, some of Dude Solution clients, and hear how they're using energy audits to further their organization. So I'm going to go ahead and click through and just walk us through the agenda for today. So first we've got an introduction, and I'll introduce you to our speakers here on the next slide. Then we're going to talk about really what the opportunity of actually managing utilities is. Then we're going to break down what energy audits really are. I'm sure everyone on the call has a definition of what an energy audit is, but we just want to introduce what we believe energy audits are so that we're working with a similar definition. Then we're going to allow some of our clients, some of your peers, to really share their story. And then at the end, we're going to have some time for Q&A and really just to wrap up the call. A couple of quick housekeeping items. So if you haven't realized by now, your lines are muted. So if you are trying to talk to us, we cannot hear you, but feel free to use our chat feature, which it looks like a lot of people have figured that out. A lot of people are joining us from all over the country. Or if you have a specific question, feel free to hover around the bottom to the Zoom toolbar, and you'll see a Q&A box where you can send any questions. We are also going to be recording today's presentation, and we're going to be sending out that recording after today and a couple of business days, so that if you want to share it with any colleagues who weren't able to attend, if you want to rewatch it or pick out some stuff that you really found impactful and interesting, feel free whenever that recording comes around to refer back to it. And then, like I said, at the end, we will have time for Q&A, so feel free to make sure to send those questions in. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce us to our presenters. So first we have Mr. Ryan Scranton, who is a project manager at the State of Wyoming Construction Department. So Ryan has been in the industry for going on 14 years, in construction specifically. He is involved from start to finish in the bidding and the scoping and the actual execution of work. Ryan has been involved in the whole process. And he's going to get a chance to elaborate a little bit more on his responsibilities here in a couple of slides. Next, we have Mr. Tony Sparks, who is joining us from Albuquerque Public Schools down in New Mexico. And he is a project manager overseeing their HVAC systems and energy conservation teams. And again, he has been in the industry for, I believe it's 15 plus years, Tony, is that correct?
At least.
At least, there you go, there you go. And so he'll get a chance to elaborate a little bit more on his responsibilities and his role at the district as well. And then last, we've got Mr. Kostib joining us from one of our partners, Bureau Veritas, and he is the program manager for energy and sustainability and capital planning. Kostib is involved in the operations strategy and overseeing facility condition assessments and energy audits at one of our partners, and he'll get the chance to talk a little bit about how BV really sees energy audits and what the value of having them performed is. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we are really coining the opportunity of utilities. So all of us on the line know that actually managing utilities, it's tough work, and it can sometimes be seen as a problem. And what we're really trying to coin is that it really is an opportunity if you know where to start if you know where waste is and you know how to actually capitalize and reduce that waste. All of us on the line also know that energy is usually a big ticket line item. It's going to be costing your organizations millions, if not multi-millions of dollars. And it's rarely a budget line item that has a tracking system tied to it. So if you think about your number one cost is people, your organization probably has an HR system or a payroll system in place to actually track that. If you think utilities are your third largest cost, your second is probably those capital expenditures that you're tracking with your ERP system. And utilities, really rarely when we deal with clients at Dude, before they start working with Energy Manager, they don't have a system in place to track it. And when you combine that with what Energy Star says is the average building is wasting around 30% of its energy, something's got to give. Especially when we're thinking about this new norm where COVID is going to be decreasing budgets. You're going to be having to rely on leaner staff counts. You're going to have to be running skinny crews. It's going to look different, and something's got to give. And what we commonly hear from peers, from public sector building operators, from facility managers, when they're talking about managing utilities, is they just don't know where to start. They know that it's important, but they're not sure where they need to begin. That they're already doing projects. They're already doing capital projects. They're already doing energy retrofits. They're already doing LED lighting projects, but they're not sure which ones are going to be prioritized and which ones are going to have the biggest bang for their buck. As anyone knows, facilities, it's like wearing 20 hats and being in one position. And so being too busy is a common occurrence that we hear from our clients, and not being able to add anything else to the plate. And if you don't go to school for energy management, it can be seen as super complex, and not being the expert can be a barrier as well. And then the fact that it's just too expensive sometimes to actually go through the process, take the time to manage and think about all of this and actually make the case for resources, it can be tough. And so what we're really trying to show is that it's a tough thing to go at alone. And what we want to show is that energy audits could really be a Kickstarter for actually getting under control what your utility systems, your utility portfolio really looks like, and where those low-hanging fruit opportunities are so that you can start moving the needle. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kostev, who's going to walk us through what energy audits are, what the value really is, and a little bit of what some common goals clients have whenever they introduce audits to their organization are. So Kostev, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Zach. So good afternoon, everyone. Kaustubh Chabukswa from Bureau Veritas. We have been doing energy sustainability and energy audits for our clients for over the last 10 to 12 years and have completed 4,800 plus audits for different clients over this period. And we are excited to partner with Dude right now to provide similar kind of solutions to our clients over here, where we can share our expertise gathered over the years and help them reduce their energy as well as the operational maintenance cost for your portfolio. So as Zach mentioned, that going forward, we are going to be seeing a downward pressure on maintenance costs and everything. And so let's try to understand how energy audits are going to help you out. So the big question is, what exactly are energy audits? Energy audits, as we look at it at Bureau Veritas, is a process of identifying your sources of energy losses as well as water losses at your facilities and optimizing them. So how do we go about it? As a part of this project, what we do is we send our assessors to your facilities. They would walk your facilities, understand how your facilities operate, understand the operation and maintenance schedules of your facility, would look into your mechanical systems, lighting, plumbing, electrical systems, and understand how your systems are being run. And then once we understand what your utility data looks like, we're going to put all these things together and figure out what are the ways to optimize your building. right? So as I mentioned, all those components that we look at, we popularly call it as the 5 most important pillars. Those are like HVAC systems, plumbing, lighting, envelope, as well as controls of your buildings. So once we identified them, we package our recommendations together in a deliverable for you, which what we take pride in calling as a comprehensive energy audit report, which is equivalent to an ASHRAE level 2 audit. The goal over here is the report is going to provide you details of your building's current operations, the way the building is set up, how your HVAC system runs, how your different domestic water heater systems runs, etc. And give you a mechanical inventory, a lighting inventory, a plumbing inventory, which will allow you to do some actionable projects in your building. And at the same time, we are going to provide you a comprehensive list of different energy and water saving measures that we have identified, the initial investments, annual savings, payback analysis, as a comprehensive report, which you can use for your own internal purposes. Okay, next slide. So the question comes is, what value would this bring to you? Okay, what value does energy audits do? And again, going back to what Zach alluded earlier, the goal over here is to identify what are your utility wastes. Okay, identify where you can optimize your buildings. Is it possible to install new controls? Is it possible to do some retrofits? Is it possible to do some retro commissioning? Or are we at a point where we are saying that, hey, at the given component is almost at its end of its useful life, and the newer components that are available are far higher in efficiencies as compared to the older systems, and it would make sense to replace it, and defining what makes sense, right? So what we provide you and what we really take pride in providing you is actionable intelligence as part of this report. Actionable intelligence is in terms of helping you identify all different kinds of energy and water saving measures which are financially feasible, right? You can do, if you want, you can install a windmill on your building, but it's not going to save you, or it's not going to provide you a payback. What we want to do is we want to help you identify which are your best bang for your buck projects. So we look at things from a savings to investment ratio, which kind of help you understand that if you're going to invest $1 today in your building, okay, and we always use the word as invest for energy. We don't, it's not a cost, it's an investment. That's how we look at it. If you're going to invest $1 today in your buildings, are you going to make your dollar back within the life of your investment? That's what makes is a cost feasible measure. And if a measure is not cost feasible, we still identify it for you because it allows you to make sure that you can implement that measure as a capital plan and not purely as an energy improvement plan. So you can reclassify it and like put it on your capital plan. And so the goal over here is we are your consultants. We are going to be helping you identify what is the best way to spend your money in order to move your needle in the right direction. How do you reduce your operational and maintenance cost? Through installing equipments which will last longer, which will overall cost you less maintenance, I think, and at the same time significantly make a dent in your utility cost. And at the same time, what we are seeing is a number of states and cities are implementing different mandates to do annual benchmarking, annual energy audits every 5 years. So it's a good thing that our audits in almost all the cities qualify for what the state and city requirements are. For example, we are working with a number of clients in the city of Boston, which has the Bordeaux energy audit requirements that requires buildings about 35,000 square feet to complete the energy audits every 5 years. So if you are in a city or state that requires such mandates, these audits will allow you to stay a step ahead of your requirements. So, then the question comes around, what are the common goals that our clients have, right? Over the last 11, 12 years that I have been in this company, we have seen a number of clients come to us with different goals. But the most common goal that they have is they come and tell us that, hey, our buildings are getting older. That means our components are getting older. The cost of maintaining our buildings is going up and the utility costs are also going up. how can we control this cost run? Okay, what are the ways we can try to reduce our energy costs, make the buildings more green? What are the ways we can be more sustainable? As uh, as people become more and more wiser about energy, people are making conscious choices about making association with organizations that are greener. So in a sense, making the organizations more sustainable. What we do over here is we try to, as a part of the energy audits, we help you develop a baseline consumption for your properties. So what baseline consumption would be is developing a starting line. Where are you going to start? Where is the 0, 0 line for you? And how are we going to proceed? Right? Then we do is with Dude Solutions, we are going to put your data in the energy manager system and develop a benchmark and benchmarking for all your facilities. That allows you to understand who your problem childs are. So what facility or what building amongst all your facilities require the most attention, which is the energy hog, right? And then what we do is we try to develop different cost and operation maintenance savings opportunities so as to make an actionable project list for you that you can effectively implement at your site and see that you're reducing your energy and operation maintenance costs. And in a sense, what we are over here is to help you become green in a realistic way and not rather just put a leaf on your building. So we want to help our clients become green and at the same time lean in terms of reducing your cost towards energy as well as operation maintenance. Okay, and that's what we have seen from our clients. So, right.
Awesome. Thanks, Kasib. I think that was a good walkthrough of just so that everyone has a great understanding of what audits really are, what we're talking about when we mention this. And I think this is a great segue into starting to introduce some of our speakers. So you got a first chance to meet a couple of them, and I'm going to give the chance for Ryan, Mr. Ryan Scranton, to talk a little bit about his role at the state in the construction department and give a little bit of background on the organization. So Ryan, would you like to introduce the audience to yourself and the org?
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate that. As you mentioned, the Wyoming State Construction Department is responsible for capital construction and major maintenance projects for all K through 12 schools, community colleges, correctional facilities, and other state agencies. I work in the construction management division and work personally with multiple agencies for their major maintenance and capital construction projects, from conception and funding to design and construction and closeout. I'm the point of contact from the state to contractors and professional service providers. My office, we have an inventory of over 1,300 buildings with over 33 million square feet across all the different agencies. I've been with this agency for 3 years, and prior to this, I was in a similar role with a smaller agency. And prior to that, I was the agency's energy manager, responsible for ensuring that the agency was energy efficient as possible. So that's really where I got my my energy background.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. And then I'm going to introduce us to Tony. And Tony, would you care to talk us through a little bit about Albuquerque Public Schools and a little bit of what you're doing at the district?
Absolutely. Thanks, Zach. Like many of you, I wear lots of hats. And so officially, I work for the Facilities Design and Construction Department, and I manage HVAC and renewable energy projects. I also lead an energy team that you'll hear more about in a second. So Albuquerque Public Schools, or APS, is admittedly probably an oversized district. It's really huge. 143 regular public schools, 160 sites that we manage. We're fortunate to have a lot of support all the way from the top to try and manage the district in a good way. And that resulted in us creating an advisory board called the Water and Energy Conservation Committee, made up of stakeholders and APS leadership and other entities that look at APS's energy footprint and try and make strategies to address it. As a result of that, we created the APS Energy Team, a group of people that are dedicated full-time to managing the district's footprint. We have in that group a water resource specialist, an energy analyst, a facility usage specialist who helps us to know when and where buildings are occupied, an energy educator to bring energy literacy into the classroom, a project manager to implement the projects as they're identified. And recently we've added 2 controls techs, which turns out to be a really important aspect of managing systems, as I'm sure you're learning. And finally, we hired an independent energy consultant to help us crunch the data. So there's a lot going on here, but I'm fortunate that we've got some resources in place you'll hear more about later.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. So now we're going to really shift into what I'm kind of coining as the energy conversation. We've got a couple of questions lined up for our speakers just to walk through a little bit of their story and how audits have appeared to be valuable at their organization. So we've got our first question, and Ryan, I'm going to shoot this one over to you, but what were the internal goals that really prompted the state, the construction department, to think about, man, it would be worthwhile to have an energy audit conducted? Can you talk us through some of those goals?
Sure, and it actually probably started out as an external goal. It was driven by an executive order from the governor to hand to us and determine if we should have a statewide energy conservation program and policy, identify the potential costs to implementing ECMs on a large order, and then finally, ultimately, as it is probably fairly common, is the savings.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's really commonly what we hear, is that it either starts from the very top or starts from a champion. So that makes a lot of sense. So Tony, I guess from you, coming from the K-12, the district side, what were some of the goals that really prompted Albuquerque to start really focusing on managing utilities, to start considering audits being a crucial part of that process? Can you talk us through some of those goals?
Certainly. Obviously, you know, managing public money, we had a roughly $20 million annual utility budget, and we're just trying to get it under control. One of the issues we have with this large spread out district is things are siloed, and many sites are doing their own thing their own way, not communicating with each other. We didn't even know what we had, and so that's not, you know, that's not a good way to manage the public's money. So some of our goals around that were to gain visibility at every site, and a measure of control at every site on building systems and utility use, so that we could start to manage it. Also, through the advisory board, we were able to create a specific goal of a 20% water and energy reduction within a 10-year time period, and get it passed by and ratified by our Board of Education, which gave us then resources to create things like the energy team and our energy center, and to put money into projects. So it boils down to money, and in our case, visibility and control.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. The public stewardship of resources really comes to mind when I was hearing you talk. So that makes a lot of sense. So gonna move on to the next question, which what we really hear is audits are a means to an end. They're not the answer themselves, but they really reveal a lot of the answers to hopefully achieve some of those goals. So Ryan, I guess based on some of the goals that you just listed, which were, let's really get an understanding of what's afoot, how did the ASHRAE Level 2 audit really help you guys on your way to achieving those goals?
Yeah, Zach, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's the means to the end. It was a tool in the first step in identifying what we don't know. You know, we had 1,300 buildings of various age, size, and use. and that, you know, the school districts are all kind of doing their own thing. And so how do we get a good grasp on that? How well are we maintaining our buildings, and really how energy efficient are we? So the audits that we conducted were used as representative samples of our building inventory to identify potential energy conservation measures, capital investment figures, potential savings, and the estimated payback for our inventory.
Awesome. No, that's right on. And so, Tony, shooting this question over to you, it seems like a little bit different of an experience than Ryan in the state of Wyoming. So how have audits really taken your program, taken the management program a little bit to the next level and helped you guys continue to iterate on some of those internal goals?
Well, right. We're fortunate to have this energy team because we're kind of in a continuous auditing mode. But as with Ryan, our first step was knowing what we had and being able to go to every site and make an evaluation. So sometimes they were, you know, as far as a ASHRAE level 2 audit, sometimes they were just, you know, an ASHRAE 1, which is you go and look. And sometimes they're even further than that, identifying capital projects and paybacks for them. So you got to know where you're at and what you've got before you can start. And for us, because we don't have unlimited resources, and I'm sure none of you do, biggest bang for the buck is what the continuous audits help with. You can identify strategies that might work really well for one building, or a district-wide strategy that you can replicate over multiple and get a savings at multiple sites with one strategy. So that's one of the ways that audits are super helpful for us, to keep your eye on what's going on and to watch how it moves so you can make good decisions.
Yeah, just knowing all the opportunity that's out there, and then you can start to stack rank them. That seems extremely useful, and I'm sure everyone's nodding their head as well. So moving on to the next question, Ryan, how did the state, after the actual audit was performed, once you got back the findings, the report, how did you all plan on using the findings from the audits, and what did that really look like, taking those findings and turning them into something? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I'd say maybe it was maybe non-traditional. We weren't looking to identify a list of ECMs for a specific building and then go out and procure, or, you know, seek funding and then implement these ECMs. But really we were trying to find out where we were and where we could go. So from a specific audit, you know, let's take a middle school, for example. We have a 200,000 square foot school built in 1950. And these are the potential ECMs that were identified. How does that look for the rest of our inventory with similar size, similar age, and use? And can we take those and implement similar ECMs in those facilities?
Got it. Yeah. Exactly what you were saying earlier, the sample size, and then try to replicate the successes. Now that makes a lot of sense. And Tony, from your perspective, audits are really a key part of the continual utility management process. How do you all really use those findings once you conduct these audits?
Well, I mean, one of the responsibilities the energy team has is to report regularly to the Board of Education what we're doing and that it's working. And so we try to use data-informed reporting. And so audits help you identify maybe patterns for conservation opportunities, or maybe behavioral adjustments that need to be made, those sort of things. And to help create tasks or projects using the data to justify them. So we justify them within our own team, but also to the Board of Education. And that data helps us prioritize what we should do first. And it's not always the least expensive thing that you choose to do. You might have other reasons that you will choose to do a project, but the findings from these audits gives you the data you need to demonstrate a return on investment and a clear path forward.
Yeah, that is something that we so oftentimes hear is I know we need to be doing projects. It's just tough to come up with the business case. And I think what you just said is audits can really provide a lot of that business case. And then it's up to you or up to the person passing this on to really bring that case to life. So, all right, moving on. If my computer would work. Here we go. There we go. So Ryan, going to ask this one of you first. It seems like it was a little different of a scenario with the state, but I know that there were a number of recommendations that came out of the audit process, and just want to see, did any of those recommended ECMs come to life? And then how does the state really plan on prioritizing? I know that the construction department wasn't necessarily in charge of executing the projects. It was more of a handoff to the school districts. So I wanted to see if you could tell us how that process worked and how some of the school districts have gone about using that information.
Sure, I'll try to. So no, we personally did not implement any of the ECMs, but as you mentioned, the reports at the end of the project were turned over to the owning agencies, school districts, and correctional facilities. And fortunately enough, they were all very willing to participate, very interested in the results and the outcomes, and are very proactive. So most likely some of the ECMs will be implemented. And how to prioritize that, I don't know personally how each agency does that, but as Tony mentioned, it's not always, it's the low-hanging fruit, and it's called the low-hanging fruit for a reason. Not always the cheapest, but based on the resources that you have available to you or to the agency, it's what's practical and what's easy to do. And so, I'd say the biggest downfall of an energy audit is doing nothing with the report, that it just sits on the shelf. But we didn't have that. We did use it as a tool to move on to the next step. And I'd say every audit is different. Every organization is different. What drives and motivates the organizations. And so identify your goals, and then make sure that at the end of your audit that your goals were met.
It's a great point about the low-hanging fruit. It's called that for a reason. And I think just another point to add on is the audits really reveal what that low-hanging fruit is. And to take that analogy another step further, low-hanging fruit keeps coming back. It keeps growing. And so audits are a key part of continuing to reveal what that looks like. So thanks for that answer, Ryan. Tony, throwing this over to you, I know you have a project really to walk us through. So I wanted to see what one of the ECMs really looks like and how you thought about this process. So I'll let you tell a little story about Albuquerque Public Schools.
Great. Yeah, this case study kind of steps you through all the classic things that Castor was talking about in what an energy audit does. First thing is identifying a need, and we had been told that an atmospheric boiler, which is basically a big water tank with a Bunsen burner under it, is going to be on, and it's going to waste energy because there's nothing you can do to control it. I mean, it's either on or it's not. You can't turn it off and let it get too cold because all these things will happen. So as far as we knew, that was an opportunity to not look at until I learned about this little deal, an optimized intelligent boiler load controller, an optimizer basically for a boiler that examines the load of the building and the load of the boiler and outside air conditions and makes the determinations whether the boiler can rest a little bit sometimes because the building itself doesn't need any help. So in order to justify it, we implemented a pilot program where we put this device on 3 different schools and measured the results. And the first slide you'll see, or the first example, this particular school, Albuquerque High, had 2 boilers working together. The blue shows the gas usage before implementation, and the green is after. It's actually, we just did them 2 days on and 2 days off with this device to see how it looked. Obviously, some savings demonstrated on both boilers. We look at the next one, which used primarily a lead and lag boiler at Harrison Middle School. Dramatic savings on the second boiler in particular by not having that having it fire so much just to keep itself warm when the building didn't need it yet. And finally, at a school that had 3 boilers tied together, big savings on the second and third boilers as well. So it seemed like the case was clear. We should be able to save money by implementing this. So the next phase, next slide please, was to analyze the data for the district and decide what would make sense for us to do. So I know you can't see all the details on this table, but we took every school we had and ranked them by utility spend, the highest at the top, and how many boilers they had. And through the pilot that we did, we determined approximately a 9% savings on gas by implementing the procedure, and extrapolate that on a table to come up with a payback. If you look at the far right column, you'll see paybacks all the way from negative paybacks up to, you know, on this particular screen, only goes up to about 3.5 years. In general, overall, 3.5 years was the average payback for the whole district by implementing this project. What a negative payback means, by the way, is you're wasting money by not doing it every single day. So we started breaking that into rounds or phases of implementation. Go ahead. By the way, to find that data on the individual sites, we used School Dude's logging of work orders and equipment, so we could gather data that was in School Dude to help us identify the various aspects of each site. But this shows the results. In the middle is the natural gas from our baseline year 2013-14 through 2018, implementing the gas strategy in phases. You can see huge savings up to 25% overall. Now, that's not the only strategy we did, but it was an immediate notice when we put these boiler optimizers on that the gas consumption started to go down per square foot. So it was worth doing, monetarily justified. And there's another little perk that can occur. You can get money back for doing these things. So the New Mexico Gas Company, in the first year alone, gave us $82,000 in rebates for implementing this procedure on our campus that we already had some great return on investment coming in. So that's kind of a classic example of identifying a problem, analyzing the data, picking a strategy, and then tracking the results and looking for ways to fund it.
That's awesome. Tony, hearing you talk about this beforehand too is just such a cool story of seeing an opportunity realized and actually going through the process of executing the project and seeing the results. So just want to commend you on that.
Yeah, thanks.
So I guess both you, Tony and Ryan, we talked about this beforehand. Something I said earlier really hits on this question too, but energy audits really are really the start, or for some people, they're a continuation of managing energy. And so I just want to ask a question. How important would you say it is to continually track and monitor utilities? And a lot of our attendees are probably thinking this is a no-brainer. Sure, it's important, but if you could just elaborate on a little bit of the why it's important. So Ryan, would you like to take us through why you think continually tracking utilities is so important?
Sure, absolutely, and I'd say it's extremely important. It's absolutely necessary. Many times, with larger organizations or governmental agencies, the individuals receiving and paying the bills are not necessarily the facility managers or the people looking at energy usage. So the disconnect between paying the bill and receiving the bill and seeing what's happening on the end is different. It can be the first indication for Tony's model of identifying the problem. It could be the first indication that something's wrong, and you need to have the baseline, the pre-audit baseline prior to implementing any ECMs to know that you've made an improvement and to realize the savings. How do you do that? You know, our school districts, a lot of them use Dude. I know there's Utility Manager Pro. I would guess that there's probably a number of utility management software out there. But if you don't have that or can't afford that, you know, Excel is a good place to start. Access is a good place to start. Just tracking your usage is going to give you the baseline of where you're at.
It's a great point, Ryan. And Tony, just shooting this over to you as well. What would you say to this question?
Well, any of us that have old building stock, and I'm sure many of us do, know that there's equipment drift or degradation over time. And so even if you think you have something working well, if you're not continuously looking at it, it could drift and become not so good later. Also, in our case, there can be controls changes, operational changes. Something got maintained and so got turned off and never turned back on. That kind of stuff happens all the time for us. So if we're not looking, things, you know, sneak out the door. Honestly, the better you monitor, the better your results will be. I think you can squeeze every opportunity out by looking more closely. And lastly, I just comment that these projects, the money you save is not always as evident as, you know, just spending money, because it's avoided spend that you're creating. And so you need to build the case all the time with your continuous monitoring that you're continuing to avoid spending utility dollars that you would have had you not been managing things.
That's a really good point. It's not always getting a check in the mail. Sometimes it's, this is what we have saved. Had we not done this, we would have continued to spend X, Y, Z. That's a great point, Tony. Right. Well, cool. So we're really winding the conversation down, and Ryan and Tony wanted to give you both the opportunity to really, what would you say to someone who is considering performing an energy audit or really starting to invest money in managing utilities? What would be some of your advice? And Ryan, I'll start with you.
Well, if you're looking at, you know, energy audits, and I think, you know, Tony in Albuquerque Public Schools are extremely fortunate to have a team. When I was really into energy management, I was an office that was one deep, and half of my battle was not conserving energy, but was convincing everybody else that we needed to conserve energy. And so, as you mentioned earlier, Zach, that you know, the audit, it can be used as creating that business case to somebody that's not the champion, not the resident expert. That's a way to quantify what you have and say, you know, this is what it's going to take to do it, but this is what we'll realize on the end. So it's just a great tool, and it's a great way to create that buy-in and that support if you don't already have it.
Awesome. And Tony, throwing this one over to you, what would you tell someone who's maybe consulting you about some of these services, or whether to start investing in managing utilities?
Right. I mean, I get asked a lot by various entities in different school districts and whatnot, you know, where they should start. And, you know, yeah, we have a big team, and no, you know, most don't. We understand that. So do something. My suggestions would be to find a partner you trust. If you don't have people in-house that have the know-how or the time to devote to it, find a partner you trust. And it can be a hired consultant or a volunteer, or I don't know, someone from your industry. And then it's super important to involve the upper management. if you don't have buy-in from the top, it's really going to be you against the world. And a good friend of mine from Santa Fe Public Schools is on this webcast, Lisa up in Santa Fe. She's a super big champion and was kind of an island for a while, and has now become a beacon because she got buy-in not only from her district support, but from the city and state as well to help fund the projects that she's doing. So those are the two things: find a partner and involve upper management.
Awesome. That's great advice. And then just winding down, and we're kind of running up on the end of the hour. Just quickly, any tricks of the trade or any tips that you guys would want to pass along for people who are starting to go through this process, or any bumps and bruises you picked up along the way that you want to pass along so that others can avoid or be prepared? And I'll start with you, Tony.
Well, like I said previously, just do something. My advice is do something, and don't worry about changing the world yet. Just take a step at a time. You'll be glad you did, and track the results. When you track the results, you build a case as you go, and it can be baby steps before you get rolling. Just keep trying. And for me, one of the most important things is to collaborate. Ask around, bring in other departments, or other entities. Our advisory council includes people from all the utility organizations, other school districts, municipalities, hospitals, and share what you learned so that you can all think about things in a new way and maybe take a step you didn't realize you could take.
Awesome. Ryan, any advice that you would want to give our listeners?
Sure. I'd say, don't go in blind. Identify a problem, a need, or goals. Create a plan, and how to implement that plan, and then really post audit. You're not done at that point. That's really when you start going. That's kind of the your first steps is you got the tools now, so go at that point. And I like what Tony said, is share. Share the information. That's going to create interest. That's going to create buy-in. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Tony. Really appreciate you guys participating and engaging with creating this presentation and going through this conversation. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to click through. And so for all of our attendees, I'm sure you know, and you've been to trade shows and presentations, there's a rule of thumb that people only take away about 10% of what they hear. And so just to keep it super simple, wanted to highlight some of the key takeaways. So on average, organizations usually waste 30% of their energy usage. And what we've clearly highlighted, and hopefully you've taken away, is audits could be a really important piece of really identifying where that waste is happening. And your peers, Ryan and Tony, and even others on this call, I'm sure could tell you that there is value in audits. There is value in managing utilities to identify waste, to recover costs, to put money back into your organization's budget. And then what we really want to talk about at the end is just to let you know that Duke Solutions, we offer energy management software, and that we are partnering with some providers to provide these energy audit services. And so one of the key takeaways we hope you get is energy audits really are that first step. But what we hope that anyone who engages with an audit realizes is that audit should drive action. And a key part of that report, not just gaining dust and sitting on the shelf, is that you have a system in place. A system that can help you identify waste and figure out where to act. One that can centralize your data, whether it's your audit report, whether it's your utility ecosystem, whatever it is. One that can simply communicate via reports and graphs to your stakeholders to get buy-in, and one that can engage others, whether it's students, teachers, your city council, your citizens, and actually participating in utility management with you. And what we want to say is we provide a solution called Energy Manager that really can allow you to answer some of these critical questions. Allow you to answer, what is your utility spend? Where is my budget going? Any projects that come out of audits or any projects that you just perform, what were the results? Actually tracking the success, seeing where you were starting as a baseline and a benchmark, and then seeing what the ROI of that project really was. And another thing we want to let you know is that a key part of managing your utilities and managing your energy is actually getting that data into the system. One of the biggest obstacles our clients come across is, how do I get all of this utility data, all these bills that I get each month into the system? And we offer some of our enhanced services to help you do that. We've got utility bill population, which is the automated bill entry of your utility bills to ensure that your database is up to date, and it reduces that admin work needed from your team so that they can focus where it's actually going to drive results. And then we also have what we are calling interval data recording and management, which is looking at that 15-minute interval data from your smart meters, or whatever your utility company can give us, whether it's 30 minutes, an hour, and really letting you identify in near real time, where is your usage happening? Where is waste happening? So that you can quickly identify it before it appears on your utility bill. So with that, we're gonna start to have some Q&A, but before we do that, I wanted to put up a poll question and just see if anyone in the audience would like more information on energy audits, on Energy Manager, whether you'd like to know more about both Energy Audits and Energy Manager, or if you want to know about any of our other Dude Solutions products. So I've just launched a poll, and we'll leave it open for close to a minute. And while I'm doing that, feel free to start actually submitting questions into the chat, and we'll start asking some of our panelists, and we can have a quick discussion with the last couple minutes of the time we have. All right, so I'm going to leave this up, and Kostib, Tony, and Ryan, we've already gotten a couple of questions, and so I'm going to start just asking. And Kostib, I think this first one is going to be for you. So would you consider lowering an on-demand fee or a startup fee to be a form of an ECM? Kostib, in your experience, whenever you've conducted audits, would that be an ECM that you recommend?
Yeah, demand management is a key part. So as part of the energy audits, we also look at how you can reduce the demand cost. And this means it's also called as demand shaving or peak shaving, where you can start cooling the building at earlier in the day and avoiding cooling during the afternoon, or peak cooling during the afternoon. So absolutely, it is a major part for commercial buildings where demand costs can really rake up during the summertime. So absolutely, yes.
Awesome, thanks for that. So Ryan, this question is coming in for you. I guess just talk us through, what were the ASHRAE Level 2 audit that the state performed? What buildings was that looking at? I know you mentioned some of the school districts, but would you mind listing out the specifics of that audit?
Sure, absolutely. We worked with Bureau Veritas and conducted 7 energy audits across an array of our buildings. We had a medical facility, a health facility, an elementary, middle, and high school, an office building, a maintenance shop, and a correctional facility. That's primarily what the building uses are in our inventory. So wanted to look at least one of each of those to get a representative sample of what they looked like and where our opportunities were.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And that was a good way to wrap it up. So Tony and Ryan, you both mentioned throughout the presentation getting buy-in from upper management is a critical part. I know that's much easier said than done, and this question comes in just to see how really is it, how really do you make the case to upper management to get them to buy in to managing utilities and that it's worthwhile? So Tony, would you mind walking us through that? And then Ryan, I'll let you add on.
In my experience, if you do your homework, you're ahead of the game. So our advisory board and then later our energy team did the number crunching ahead of time. We did the research to figure out what would make sense, and then you just present a logical case. You can't go in too vague to someone like a school board or your boss and not have an action plan. So if you prepare something that makes sense and you can show at least conceptually that it would be worthwhile financially or operationally, then it's most groups that have good intelligence will recognize that and say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And then promise them that you will follow up with them and show them the results as you're going. And then be honest with it. If it happens and it's positive, that's great. And if it's negative, say, oops, it didn't work. Let's try something else.
Awesome. Ryan, anything that you would add there?
No, not really. You know, I think, you know, build your case and be prepared. Show them the numbers. Anything quantifiable, you know, it's hard to argue with. And then, you know, if you don't have a lot of authority or horsepower outside of that, you know, it's really on them. And you've done your part. There's not much more you can do other than continue to show and demonstrate opportunities for savings.
Yeah, that's a great point. So last question, and then we'll wrap for the day. This question's for you, Tony. Mike and Doug are asking, what products did you actually use on your boilers, and how much do they typically cost? I believe I'm pronouncing FireEye. I don't know.
FireEye was FireEye is the manufacturer. It's called an NXM2G, and that NXM2G is the optimizer unit. They're a few $1,000s each, plus an installation, depending. I mean, in our case, after we did the analysis, we cut a deal with them because we're going to buy a whole bunch. And so we might have got a lower unit price, but they're not super expensive. You do need a qualified installer that knows what they're doing and how to hook them up right. So make sure you get that identified before you implement the project. But like I said, we had paybacks that averaged 3.5 years throughout the entire district using that product.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. And hopefully that answered the question, Mike and Doug. And if you still have some questions, feel free to shoot us an email and we'll get you in contact with Tony. Well, we are at the top of the hour. Really thank you for attending, everyone. I know that right now is a busy time. Tony and Ryan and Costa, just want to thank you for your participation and your engagement on this presentation. Hope everyone has a great afternoon. The recording of today's presentation will be sent out in the next couple of business days, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care. Good luck.